My name is Bryanna. I am 32 years old and I just bought my dream house after saving every penny for 10 years. As an architect, I wanted to surprise my family with this achievement, so I kept it a secret. During a business trip to Chicago, I received a panicked call from my neighbor warning me about strangers inside my new home. Heart racing, I checked the security cameras only to discover my brother Daniel, his wife, and their kids wandering through my rooms. What I overheard next made my blood run cold. Before I continue this story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe if family betrayal stories make your jaw drop too. As a residential eco architect, my days revolve around designing sustainable homes for clients who want to reduce their carbon footprint without sacrificing comfort. I specialize in retrofitting older properties with modern, energy efficient solutions while preserving their original charm. My passion for sustainable living spaces began in college, but my family never really understood it. They saw it as an impractical career compared to something stable like finance or medicine. For the past 7 years, I had been living in a tiny downtown apartment, barely 600 square feet, with an exorbitant rent that kept climbing every year. The space was so cramped that my drafting table doubled as my dining table, and my living room transformed into my bedroom each night. Despite the financial strain, I loved the location near the design district, where I could network with other professionals and stay close to my favorite cafe, where I did most of my freelance work. Family dynamics in our household had always been complicated. Growing up, it was clear my parents favored my older brother, Daniel. 4 years older than me, at 36, Daniel followed the path they had envisioned for both of us. After business school, he secured a prestigious position at a financial firm, married Sophie, a former beauty pageant contestant, and started a picture perfect family with 2 children. Every family gathering inevitably turned into a showcase of Daniel and Sophie's achievements, with my parents beaming with pride. Their spacious suburban home, luxury vehicles, and annual vacations to exotic locations were frequent topics of conversation. Meanwhile, my choice to pursue architecture was met with concerned looks and questions about job security and income potential. Daniel never missed an opportunity to undermine my career choices. At our last family dinner just 3 months ago, he openly mocked my profession while passing the mashed potatoes. "Still drawing little houses for a living, Bree?" he asked with that condescending smile he only reserved for me. "You know, if you ever want to make real money, I could get you an entry-level position at my company. The benefits alone would be better than whatever you're making now." Our parents laughed appreciatively while I forced a smile and changed the subject. That dinner was the moment I decided not to tell anyone about my house hunting plans. Their dismissal of my career and life choices had gone on long enough, and I wanted just one thing that was purely mine, unsullied by their judgment. Daniel and Sophie's children, Tyler and Lily, aged 8 and 5, were another source of tension. Spoiled beyond belief, they treated my apartment like a playground whenever they visited, touching my expensive drafting equipment and disturbing my organized chaos. Sophie would watch with a passive smile, occasionally saying, "Kids will be kids," when I tried to establish boundaries. My house hunting journey began 6 months ago. Every weekend, I met with Emma, my realtor, to view properties. After more than 30 houses, nothing felt right. Either the location was wrong, the structure needed more work than my budget allowed, or the energy efficiency would be impossible to improve. Emma started joking that I was the pickiest client she had ever worked with. But I knew what I wanted. If I was going to commit to a 30-year mortgage, the house needed to be perfect. Then, one rainy Sunday, Emma called with excitement in her voice. A Victorian-style house had just come on the market in Oak Ridge, a historic neighborhood known for its tree-lined streets and tight-knit community. The previous owner, an elderly professor, had already made significant updates to the electrical and plumbing systems while maintaining the home's architectural integrity. The moment I walked through the front door, I knew this was it. The house had 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, a spacious kitchen with a breakfast nook, and large windows that flooded the rooms with natural light. The backyard featured mature oak trees, a small garden area, and enough space to potentially add a studio where I could work from home. The previous owner had even installed solar panels on the south-facing roof, perfectly aligning with my sustainable lifestyle. What really sold me was the window seat in the master bedroom. Growing up, I had always dreamed of having a cozy nook where I could read and sketch while watching the seasons change outside. This window overlooked a Japanese maple tree that would turn brilliant red in autumn. I could already envision myself sitting there with a cup of tea, working on my designs while watching raindrops dance on the leaves. This house represented everything I had worked for. It wasn't just a financial investment, it was a symbol of my independence and personal success. Despite what my family thought, I had built a solid career and clientele. The fact that I could afford this house on my own terms felt like the ultimate validation. For once in my life, I wasn't going to let Daniel or my parents diminish this achievement. Emma proved to be more than just a realtor during the buying process. She became my confidant and cheerleader, understanding exactly why keeping this purchase secret from my family meant so much to me. When I expressed concerns about the mortgage application, she introduced me to Mark, a mortgage broker who specialized in loans for self-employed professionals like me. The mortgage application process was nerve-wracking. As a self-employed architect with variable income, I had to provide tax returns from the past 3 years, profit and loss statements, client contracts, and proof of ongoing projects. Mark warned me that lenders scrutinize self-employed applicants more thoroughly, which meant additional paperwork and justifications for every deposit and withdrawal in my accounts. There were moments when I feared the loan would fall through. One underwriter questioned a large deposit in my savings account, which was actually payment for a major commercial project I had completed 6 months ago. I spent hours gathering additional documentation to explain my income patterns and business expenses. The stress caused several sleepless nights, but Mark reassured me that my excellent credit score and the substantial down payment I had saved would work in my favor. When the pre-approval finally came through, I celebrated alone in my apartment with a bottle of wine and takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. The approval was for $350,000, which, combined with my $100,000 down payment, put the Victorian house within reach. However, the real challenge came when I learned there were 3 other offers on the property. Emma helped me craft a compelling offer letter to accompany my bid. We emphasized my profession as an architect who would preserve and enhance the home's historical features. I also agreed to a flexible closing timeline to accommodate the elderly seller's need to find suitable senior housing. My offer was $5,000 above the asking price, stretching my budget to the absolute limit. The 2-day waiting period felt like an eternity. When Emma finally called with the news that my offer had been accepted, I screamed so loudly that my neighbor knocked on my wall to check if everything was okay. I was going to be a homeowner. Me, Bryanna Davis, the daughter whose career choices had always been questioned, was about to own a piece of architectural history. Signing the closing documents was surreal. As I penned my signature on page after page, a mixture of exhilaration and terror washed over me. The final number on the mortgage documents represented the largest debt I had ever taken on, but also the fulfillment of a dream I had harbored since childhood. The keys handed to me by the escrow officer felt impossibly heavy in my palm, weighted with both responsibility and possibility. Back in my apartment, I created a detailed financial spreadsheet mapping out my mortgage payments for the next 5 years. I factored in property taxes, insurance, utilities, and maintenance costs, along with potential increases in my income based on confirmed projects. The numbers were tight, especially for the first year, but manageable. I would need to take on a few additional clients and cut back on non-essentials, but the sacrifice would be worth it. Moving day arrived 3 weeks later. I hired a local moving company recommended by Emma, splurging a bit for their full packing service since I was in the middle of a demanding project deadline. Watching the movers carefully wrap my drafting table, architecture books, and the small collection of art I had accumulated over the years made the transition feel real in a way that signing papers had not. Setting up my new home became an exercise in patience and creativity. I spent evenings arranging furniture, unpacking boxes, and planning renovations I would tackle over time. My first priority was creating my home office in the smallest of the 4 bedrooms, where natural light from east-facing windows would be perfect for my drafting work. The second largest bedroom became a guest room, though I had no immediate plans to invite family to stay. Security was a major concern. Living alone in a new neighborhood, I invested in a comprehensive system with 6 exterior cameras and 4 interior ones, all connected to an app on my phone that allowed real-time monitoring from anywhere. The system included door and window sensors, motion detectors, and a direct line to a security company. The installation took a full day, but the peace of mind was worth every penny. Within my first week, I met Martha, my next-door neighbor, a retired literature professor in her late 60s. She brought over a homemade apple pie and offered a wealth of information about the neighborhood. Martha had lived in her house for over 30 years and knew every family on the block, their histories, and even their pets' names. Her husband had passed away 5 years earlier, and she seemed grateful for new company. The previous owner of your house, Professor Jenkins, was a dear friend of mine, Martha told me over tea in my barely furnished dining room. He would be pleased to know another academic has moved in. This neighborhood has always attracted educators and creative types. Martha pointed out important details about the area that no realtor would mention: the best days for garbage collection, which nearby trees would drop the most leaves in fall, and which neighbors might be nosy. She specifically mentioned Mr. Harris across the street, a widower in his 70s who kept to himself but noticed everything. Richard Harris watches the street like a hawk from his front window. Some find it intrusive, but I consider it free security. Nothing happens on this block without Richard noticing it. As I settled in, I began personalizing the outdoor spaces. I planted flowers along the front walkway and started a vegetable garden in the backyard. The physical labor of digging in the soil and arranging plants provided a welcome break from the precision required in my architecture work. There was something deeply satisfying about creating beauty that would evolve with the seasons. Inside, I splurged on a few key pieces of furniture I had always wanted but could never fit in my apartment. The centerpiece was an antique upright piano for the living room. I had played throughout childhood and college, but gave it up when apartment living made it impractical. Finding this beautiful mahogany piano at an estate sale felt like serendipity, and having it professionally tuned was my gift to myself. By the end of the first month, the house was starting to feel like mine. My clothes filled the master bedroom closet, my cookbooks lined the kitchen shelves, and my collection of architectural models decorated the built-in bookcases in the living room. I had repainted the master bedroom and bathroom in a soothing sage green, a project that took an entire weekend but transformed the spaces. I began planning a housewarming party where I would finally reveal my new home to friends, colleagues, and yes, eventually my family. The guest list, menu, and even playlist were meticulously planned. I wanted everything to be perfect when I finally showed my achievement to the world. Little did I know that my carefully orchestrated reveal would be hijacked in the most unexpected and hurtful way. The Monday morning that changed everything started like any other. I was enjoying coffee in my new kitchen, reviewing client notes for the day, when my phone rang. It was James, my boss at the architectural firm where I worked on larger projects while maintaining my private practice. "Bryanna, we have a situation with the Chicago project," James said, without preamble. "The client is threatening to walk unless we address their concerns immediately. I need you on a plane today." My heart sunk. The Chicago project was a large-scale, sustainable apartment complex that had been in development for over a year. Losing it would be catastrophic for the firm and would certainly affect my position. But I had been planning my housewarming party for the coming weekend, with invitations already sent to 20 friends and colleagues. "How long will I need to be there?" I asked, already mentally rearranging my schedule. James replied, 3 days minimum. The contractor misinterpreted some of your specifications, and since you're the lead designer, you need to be on site to clarify and potentially revise the plans. With the resigned sigh, I agreed and immediately began preparations for the trip. I sent apologetic texts to everyone invited to my party, promising to reschedule soon. Then I packed a small suitcase with business attire suitable for construction site visits and client meetings. Before leaving, I did a thorough check of the house, setting the security system and adjusting the thermostat. As a final precaution, I walked over to Martha's house to let her know I would be away. We had developed a neighborly routine of collecting each other's mail and keeping an eye on our respective properties. I'll have my phone with me at all times, I assured Martha, handing her a spare key. The security company has instructions to call me first, then the police if there are any issues, and you have my number if anything seems off. Martha patted my hand reassuringly. Don't worry about a thing, dear. Richard and I will keep watch, and your house will be just as you left it when you return. My flight to Chicago was turbulent, matching my unease about leaving my new home so soon after moving in. The project situation turned out to be even more complicated than James had indicated. The contractor had substituted several key materials without approval, compromising both the aesthetic and sustainability goals of the design. The client, an eco-conscious developer with a reputation for perfectionism, was understandably furious. The first 2 days in Chicago were a blur of tense meetings, site inspections, and late-night revisions to salvage the project. By Wednesday evening, we had managed to reach a compromise that satisfied the client while remaining feasible within the construction timeline. I was exhausted but relieved, looking forward to returning home the next day. I was reviewing the final revisions in my hotel room around 9 p.m. when my phone rang with an unfamiliar local number. Assuming it was a work call, I answered professionally. Hello, this is Bryanna Davis? Miss Davis, this is Richard Harris, your neighbor from across the street. My body tensed immediately. Mr. Harris and I had exchanged nothing more than polite waves in the month I had lived there. For him to call me directly meant something was wrong. Yes, Mr. Harris? Is everything all right? I'm not sure, he replied hesitantly. There are several cars parked in your driveway. The lights are all on in your house, and I can hear music and children's voices. Martha gave me your number. She thought you should know right away. My mind raced through possibilities. A break-in, squatters, or perhaps the security company conducting a check. But none of those explanations accounted for children's voices. How many cars, Mr. Harris? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. 3. A black SUV, a red sedan, and a blue minivan. He paused. The people don't look like burglars. They're well-dressed, but Martha insisted you were in Chicago. I thanked him for his vigilance, promised to handle the situation, and hung up. With trembling fingers, I opened the security app on my phone. The connection failed twice before finally displaying the camera feeds. What I saw made my stomach drop. The exterior camera showed the vehicles Mr. Harris had described. The living room feed revealed my brother, Daniel, lounging on my new sofa, drink in hand, while his wife, Sophie, examined my bookshelves with a critical eye. Their children, Tyler and Lily, were jumping on the cushions of my window seat. The kitchen camera showed platters of food and wine bottles spread across the countertop I had meticulously selected for its sustainable materials. They were having a party in my house without my knowledge or permission. Confusion gave way to anger as I struggled to understand how they had gained access. Martha had my spare key, but she would never give it to anyone without contacting me first. Had they broken in? Or somehow convinced the security company they were authorized visitors? As these questions swirled, a more immediate concern took precedence. I needed to find out what was happening and put a stop to it. I tried calling Daniel's cell phone, but the call went straight to voicemail. Next, I called Martha, who answered on the second ring. "Bryanna, dear, I just heard from Richard. I'm so sorry. I didn't know you hadn't authorized this," she said, her voice thick with distress. "Authorized? What? Martha, how did they get in?" What she told me next made my blood run cold. "Your brother came by this afternoon," Martha explained, her voice shaking slightly. "He said you'd had a minor accident in Chicago and needed some medical documents you keep at home. He seemed so worried, said he'd called him specifically because you couldn't reach me earlier." My free hand clenched into a fist. "I had no accident, Martha. I never called him." "Oh dear," Martha whispered. "He was so convincing. He showed me texts from your number. I should have called you directly to verify, but he was in such a hurry. Said the hospital needed the papers immediately. I feel terrible, Bryanna." The realization that Daniel had fabricated an emergency to manipulate my elderly neighbor made me feel physically ill. "This is not your fault, Martha. He deliberately misled you." "Did he say anything about why there are now multiple people and cars at my house?" "He mentioned something about getting family to help gather the necessary paperwork since you've just moved in and things might be disorganized. I thought it was a bit strange when more people arrived, but I assumed you had approved it." "Should I call the police?" I hesitated, torn between immediate action and gathering more information. "Let me watch the security feeds a bit longer to understand what they're doing. I'll call you right back." With trembling fingers, I navigated through the different camera feeds on my phone. In the master bedroom, Daniel was leading Sophie on a tour, gesturing dismissively at my newly painted walls. "She always did have odd taste," his voice came through clearly on the audio. "Green in a bedroom? It looks like a hospital." Sophie nodded in agreement, pulling out her phone to take photos. "We'd have to repaint everything if we moved in, and these curtains would need to be replaced immediately." Moved in. The implication sent a chill down my spine. I switched to the guest bedroom camera where Tyler was bouncing on the freshly made bed while Lily rifled through a decorative box containing keepsakes from my travels. Back in the living room, Sophie was inspecting the piano, running a finger along the top as if checking for dust. I'm surprised she could afford this. It looks expensive. Probably secondhand. I can't imagine how she's affording this house on an architect's salary. The mortgage must be crushing her. The casual dismissal of my financial acumen stung, but what came next was worse. "We should offer to help her," Sophie suggested with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We could propose moving in together to share expenses. The house is certainly big enough for all of us, and it would be a step up from our place." Daniel nodded slowly, warming to the idea. "Or we could offer to buy it from her. We could position it as doing her a favor, taking the burden off her hands. I bet we could get it below market value if we time it right, when the financial strain starts showing." I felt physically sick listening to them plot. These weren't just idle musings, but a calculated strategy to take advantage of what they perceived as my financial vulnerability. The betrayal cut deep, confirming every suspicion I had ever had about how little my family respected me. The camera feed showed Daniel moving to the fourth bedroom, which I had set up as my home office. He began opening drawers and rifling through papers on my desk. The invasion of privacy sparked a fresh wave of outrage. He pulled out folders containing my house documentation, mortgage papers, and design plans for future renovations. "Jackpot," he muttered, spreading the papers across my desk. "Let's see exactly what our little sis has gotten herself into." Sophie joined him, and together they pored over my private financial information. Their expressions shifted from curiosity to surprise as they reviewed the mortgage documents. "She put down $100,000, Daniel said incredulously. Where did she get that kind of money? Maybe she really did get an inheritance, Sophie suggested. From your mother's side. Perhaps that aunt who passed away last year? Great Aunt Ruth? She left everything to charity, Daniel replied, still scanning the documents. This doesn't make sense. Her business can't possibly generate this kind of income. The disdain in his voice reflected years of underestimating me, of dismissing my career as a frivolous pursuit rather than the successful profession it had become. What hurt most wasn't that he was surprised by my financial success, but that his immediate reaction was suspicion rather than pride. As I watched my brother and his wife invade my privacy and belittle my achievements, a cold resolve formed within me. This was not just a misunderstanding or a well-intentioned surprise gone wrong. This was a deliberate violation motivated by jealousy and disrespect. And I was not going to let it stand. I continued watching the security footage, my anger building, with each passing minute only deepened my anger. Daniel had moved from my office back to the living room, phone in hand. The camera caught him dialing a number and putting the call on speaker. "Mom, Dad, you will never believe where I am right now," he announced, his voice carrying a false cheerfulness that made my skin crawl. "Where are you, son?" my father's voice responded from the phone. "I'm standing in Bryanna's new house. Yes, you heard that right. Your daughter bought a house and didn't tell any of us." There was a pause before my mother's voice chimed in. "A house? How could she afford a house?" Daniel exchanged a knowing look with Sophie before responding. "That's the interesting part. I found the paperwork. Bryanna received money from Great Aunt Ruth and kept it secret from all of us." My jaw dropped at the blatant lie. Great Aunt Ruth had been my father's aunt, who passed away 3 years ago. She was a devoted philanthropist who left her modest estate to her favorite environmental causes. There had been no inheritance for anyone in the family, a fact Daniel knew perfectly well. "What?" My father's voice rose sharply. "Ruth left her money to Bryanna? That can't be right. The lawyer told us everything went to those nature foundations." "Well, the documents don't lie, Dad," Daniel continued smoothly. "It looks like Bryanna got a significant sum that helped her buy this place. Pretty nice house, too. Historic district, 4 bedrooms, nice yard, recently renovated." I could hear my mother's agitation through the speaker. "I can't believe she would keep something like that from us. An inheritance should be shared with the family. What else is she hiding?" The ease with which my brother fabricated the story and the readiness of my parents to believe the worst about me cut deeper than I could have imagined. Daniel had not only invaded my home, but was now poisoning my relationship with my parents through calculated lies. Sophie joined the conversation, her voice syrupy sweet. "We were thinking of throwing a surprise housewarming party for Bryanna when she gets back from her business trip. Would you two be able to come this weekend? We can invite the whole family to celebrate." It was immediately clear this party was not about celebrating my achievement, but about exposing what they believed was my deception and asserting control over my property. My parents eagerly agreed to attend, already discussing how to confront me about the supposed inheritance. After ending the call, Daniel and Sophie exchanged satisfied smiles. "We were thinking of throwing a surprise housewarming party for Bryanna when she gets back from her business trip. We were thinking of throwing a surprise housewarming party for Bryanna when she gets back from her business trip. Would you two be able to come this weekend? We could invite the whole family to celebrate." It was immediately clear this party was not about celebrating my achievement, but about exposing what they believed was my deception and asserting control over my property. My parents eagerly agreed to attend, already discussing how to confront me about the supposed inheritance. After ending the call, Daniel and Sophie exchanged satisfied smiles. "That went perfectly," Sophie said. "Once everyone knows about the house and the money she's been hiding, she'll have some serious explaining to do. And if she gets defensive or tries to shut us out, it'll only make her look worse. Either way, we can position ourselves as the concerned family members just trying to help her make good decisions." The calculated manipulation left me speechless. This was not impulsive behavior, but a carefully constructed plan to undermine me and potentially gain control of my new home. As I processed this realization, the camera feed showed Daniel discovering the small safe I had installed in my bedroom closet for important documents. "I wonder what other secrets she's keeping in here," he mused, examining the lock. To my horror, he didn't stop at looking. He retrieved tools from somewhere off camera and began attempting to force the safe open. After several minutes of struggle, the lock gave way with an audible crack. Inside were my property deed, social security card, passport, and a folder containing details of my savings accounts and investments. Daniel took everything out, examining each document closely and taking photos with his phone. Meanwhile, in the living room, Sophie was going through my clothing and personal items, opening jewelry boxes and evaluating their contents. The children had moved on from jumping on furniture to more destructive activities. Tyler was banging aggressively on my piano keys, occasionally pouring water from his juice box into the instrument. Lily had found markers somewhere and was drawing on my freshly painted living room wall. Neither Daniel nor Sophie made any attempt to stop their children's behavior. In fact, Sophie laughed when she noticed Lily's artwork on my wall. "Look at that! We would have had to repaint anyway. Lily's just giving us a head start." The casual destruction of my property and the invasion of my privacy continued as Daniel made another call, this time to someone named Greg, who apparently worked at his bank. "Hey Greg, hypothetical question for you. If someone wanted to transfer property ownership to a family member, what's the easiest way to do that? Yes, like a house, right? And if the original owner might be reluctant, are there ways to facilitate that process?" I couldn't hear Greg's responses, but Daniel's questions painted a clear picture of his intentions. He was actively exploring ways to take my house from me. The conversation continued with questions about joint ownership, power of attorney, and financial incompetence as grounds for family intervention. By this point, Tyler had discovered my collection of architectural models on the bookshelf and was treating them like toys, breaking the delicate structures I had spent hours creating. Lily had moved from the living room walls to my home office, where she was scribbling on my custom blueprints I had drafted for future renovations. Sophie called out to Daniel from my closet. "Her clothes are actually decent quality. I could use some of these if we move in. We're about the same size." The casual assumption that my possessions would soon be theirs pushed me over the edge. This was no longer just an invasion of privacy or a family disagreement. This was a coordinated effort to appropriate my home, my belongings, and my financial independence. With shaking hands but resolute determination, I closed the security app and opened my phone contacts. It was time to take action. I dialed the local police department's non-emergency number, took a deep breath, and prepared to explain the situation. As the line connected and a dispatcher answered, I felt a strange calm replace the turmoil of emotions. "Hello. I need to report unauthorized individuals in my home. They gained access under false pretenses, are damaging property, and have broken into my safe. I have everything documented on security cameras." The course was set. There would be no turning back now. The police dispatcher asked for my information and address, then inquired if I knew who the intruders were. Yes, I replied, the words feeling strange in my mouth. It's my brother and his family. They gained access by lying to my neighbor, claiming I'd been in an accident and needed documents from home. There was a brief pause before There was a brief pause. Ma'am, if this is a family dispute over property access, we typically recommend civil remedies rather than police involvement. This is not a simple dispute, I clarified, my voice growing firmer. They broke into my safe, are photographing my financial documents, and are actively damaging my property. I have video evidence of all of this, plus my brother discussing plans to take ownership of my house. They gained entry through fraudulent means, not as invited guests. After providing additional details about the situation, including the fact that I was out of town but had video confirmation of everything, the dispatcher agreed to send officers to investigate. I gave her Martha's contact information as a local witness who can confirm my ownership and the deception used to gain entry. My next call was to Martha herself. The police are on their way, I told her. Would you be willing to speak with them and confirm that Daniel lied about why he needed access to my house? Of course, dear, Martha replied without hesitation. What that young man did was fraud, simple and pure. I feel terrible for being fooled. I assured her, you have nothing to feel guilty about. Daniel can be very convincing when he wants something. There's one more thing I need to. When the police arrived, I asked, could you go over with them? I want someone I trust there, and it would help if you could point out that none of these people live there. Martha agreed immediately, and I could hear the determination in her voice. After hanging up, I called Emma, my real estate agent, hoping she could provide additional verification of my ownership if needed. This is absolutely outrageous, Emma exclaimed after I explained the situation. I can email the closing documents to the police department right away, and I'll call the title company to alert them that someone might try to fraudulently transfer the property. Do you want me to drive over there now? I hesitated, not wanting to involve too many people in what was already a humiliating family situation. The email would be great, but you don't need to go in person. The police and Martha should be enough. With those arrangements made, I booked the earliest possible flight home for the next morning, paying nearly double the normal fare for the last-minute reservation. Then I returned to monitoring the security cameras, where the situation continued to unfold. In the living room, Tyler had progressed from damaging my piano to pulling books from the shelves and tossing them on the floor. Lily had found her way into my bedroom, trying on my jewelry and makeup. Daniel and Sophie were in the kitchen opening another bottle of wine and seemingly celebrating their successful infiltration of my home. About 20 minutes after my calls, the camera facing the street showed a police cruiser pulling up outside. 2 officers approached the front door and rang the bell. I watched as Daniel answered, looking confused but composed. Good evening, officers. Can I help you? His voice was steady, confident. We received a report of unauthorized individuals at this residence. Do you live here, sir? Daniel smiled easily. No, this is my sister's house. She's away on business, and we're just checking on things for her. May I ask how you gained entry? We have a key, Daniel replied, holding it up as if that settled the matter. My sister gave it to us before she left. We'll need to speak with your sister to confirm that. Can you call her for us? Daniel's composure faltered slightly. She's in meetings in Chicago right now, hard to reach, but I can show you texts where she asks us to come by. As Daniel fumbled with his phone, Martha appeared at the edge of the camera's view, approaching the officers. Excuse me, she called out. I live next door, and I can confirm this man does not have permission to be here. The officers turned to Martha as she explained how Daniel had obtained the key through deception. Daniel's face darkened as he realized his story was unraveling. This is ridiculous. It's a family misunderstanding. My sister and I share everything. The homeowner has specifically stated you are not authorized to be here. She has provided evidence that you obtained entry fraudulently." Sophie appeared in the doorway, her voice rising indignantly. "We're family. You can't treat us like criminals for visiting my sister-in-law's house." The situation escalated as the officers requested everyone to step outside. They conducted a brief search of Daniel and found my property documents in his jacket pocket. Documents Martha confirmed did not belong to him. The officers then instructed the entire family to vacate the premises, confiscating the key Daniel had used. Throughout the confrontation, I felt a complex mix of emotions. There was satisfaction in seeing Daniel's deception exposed, but also profound sadness that our relationship had deteriorated to this point. Most of all, I felt relief that action was being taken to protect my home and possessions. As the police were escorting everyone out, my phone rang with my parents' number. Taking a deep breath, I answered. "Bryanna, what is going on?" my father demanded without preamble. "Daniel just called saying the police are kicking them out of your house. Since when do you have a house? And what is this about, an inheritance from Aunt Ruth?" "Dad, there was no inheritance," I replied calmly. "Daniel made that up. I bought this house with my savings and a mortgage, like most people do. And yes, I called the police because Daniel lied to gain access to my home, went through my personal financial documents, and damaged my property." There was a long silence before my mother joined the conversation. "Why would you keep buying a house a secret from your family? That's not normal behavior, Bryanna." The accusatory tone, the immediate assumption that I was in the wrong rather than Daniel, confirmed exactly why I had kept the purchase private. "I'll explain everything when I get back tomorrow," I said wearily. "Right now, I need to coordinate with the police to secure my home." After ending the call, I spent the next hour providing statements to the police by phone and watching as they documented the damage. When they finally left, Martha volunteered to check the house one last time before locking up for the night. "Everything is secure now, though I must say your beautiful piano has water damage and there are marker drawings on several walls. Those children need better supervision." I thanked Martha profusely for her help and tried to get a few hours of sleep before my early morning flight. But rest eluded me as I replayed the events of the evening and braced myself for the confrontation that would inevitably come when I returned home. 2 days after the police intervention, I sat in my parents' living room facing my entire family. The atmosphere was thick with tension. My parents sat rigidly on their favorite sofa, their expressions alternating between confusion and disapproval. Daniel and Sophie occupied the love seat, both maintaining the air of victims wrongly accused. Their children had been sent to play in another room away from the adult conversation. "I think you owe everyone an explanation," my father began, his tone stern. "Not just about the house, but about calling the police on your own brother." I had anticipated this and was prepared. Rather than becoming defensive, I remained calm and straightforward. "I'd be happy to explain everything. First, there was no inheritance from Aunt Ruth or anyone. I purchased my house through traditional means with money I saved up over 10 years and a mortgage I qualified for based on my income. My business has been successful for several years now. I've developed a specialty in ecological renovations that command premium rates. Additionally, I've been living well below my means, specifically saving for a home purchase." My mother leaned forward, examining the documents with a frown. "But why would you keep this secret? Family doesn't keep secrets like this." "I wanted to accomplish this on my own terms, without judgment or interference. Based on what happened when Daniel discovered my house, my concerns were clearly justified." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "That's unfair. We were just surprised and concerned about you making such a large purchase impulsively." "There was nothing impulsive about it, and concern doesn't explain breaking into my safe, going through my financial documents, or discussing ways to take ownership of my property away from me." My parents looked confused. "What are you talking about?" my father asked. This was the moment I had been preparing for. I took out my tablet and pulled up selected clips from my security cameras. starting with Daniel lying to Martha about my supposed accident. As the videos played, showing Daniel and Sophie systematically invading my privacy, discussing plans to take my house, and allowing their children to damage my property, the room grew very still. My mother covered her mouth in shock, while my father's expression hardened. Daniel and Sophie stared at the screen with growing discomfort. When the clip of Daniel calling our parents and lying about an inheritance finished playing, I stopped the video. There's more, but I think this gives you a clear picture of what actually happened. A heavy silence filled the room. Finally, my father turned to Daniel. Is this true? Did you lie about an inheritance to turn us against Bryanna? Daniel's confident facade cracked. It's not that simple. I was upset that she had been keeping secrets. I thought she must have received money from somewhere. So you made up a story instead of just asking me? I challenged. Sophie jumped in defensively. You have to understand how it looked from our perspective. You suddenly buy a house in an expensive neighborhood completely out of the blue. What were we supposed to think? Perhaps that I'm more successful than you've given me credit for, that I've worked hard and managed my money well. That would have been a more reasonable assumption than fabricating an inheritance story. My mother wiped away tears. I can't believe this. Both of you keeping things from the family. This isn't how we raised you. Mom, I said gently but firmly, I'm an adult. I don't need family permission to purchase a home. What Daniel did wasn't just keeping secrets, it was breaking and entering, invasion of privacy, and attempted theft. My father, always the mediator, tried to find middle ground. Clearly, there have been misunderstandings on both sides, but families should be able to work these things out without involving the police. I called the police because Daniel broke into my safe and was photographing my financial documents. He was actively researching ways to transfer my property into his name. This went far beyond a family disagreement. Daniel finally broke his composure, collapsing entirely. Fine, yes, I was jealous, okay? You've always been the smart one, the creative one, while I've been stuck in a corporate job I hate, drowning in debt, trying to maintain the lifestyle everyone expects. When I saw your house, something just snapped. It should have been me buying the first family home, not my little sister who draws pictures for a living. The raw honesty was unexpected. For the first time, I glimpsed the insecurity beneath my brother's arrogant exterior. It didn't excuse his actions, but it helped me understand them. Sophie, however, remained defiant. We wouldn't have had to take such measures if you had just been open with the family from the beginning. Your secrecy created this whole situation. My privacy is not an invitation for invasion, I replied firmly. I had every right to keep my financial decisions to myself, and nothing justifies what you two did. My parents looked back and forth between us, clearly struggling to process everything. My mother finally spoke, her voice subdued. Daniel, what you did was wrong, very wrong. I'm ashamed that you would lie to us and violate your sister's home that way. Daniel looked down, unable to meet her eyes. My father nodded in agreement, his earlier defensiveness replaced with solemn disappointment. So, where do we go from here, my father asked. How do we move forward as a family? I had given this question considerable thought during my flight home. I need some space and time, I said honestly. I can't simply pretend this didn't happen. Daniel and Sophie broke my trust in a fundamental way, and that will take time to rebuild, if it can be rebuilt at all. I turned to my parents. I'm willing to work on our relationship, but I need you to respect my independence and my achievements, even when they don't match your expectations. No more dismissing my career or questioning my choices. To Daniel and Sophie, I was more direct. I won't be having you in my home for the foreseeable future. The damage you caused, both physical and emotional, needs time to heal. I'll maintain a relationship with Tyler and Lily because they're innocent in this, but it will be on my terms. Daniel looked as though he wanted to argue, but remained silent. Sophie huffed indignantly, but also held her tongue. My parents nodded slowly, processing the new boundaries I had established. The weeks that followed were a period of intense healing and reflection. I sought help from a therapist who specialized in family trauma, finding it immensely valuable to gain an objective perspective on the dysfunctional patterns that had defined our family dynamics for years. I also joined a support group for individuals dealing with toxic family relationships. Hearing other stories helped me understand that my experiences were not unique and that establishing healthy boundaries was not only justified, but necessary for my well-being. At home, I focused on reclaiming my space. The piano required expensive repairs due to the water damage, and several walls needed repainting to cover Lily's artwork. Each repair felt like an act of taking back control, of erasing the violation that had occurred. I threw myself into my work, taking on exciting new projects that challenged my skills and reinforced my professional identity. The success and recognition I received served as powerful reminders that my career choices were valid and valuable, despite my family's earlier dismissal. 6 weeks after the incident, I decided it was time to properly celebrate my home on my own terms. I planned a new housewarming party, inviting friends, colleagues, and neighbors who had supported me through this difficult time. My parents were included on the guest list after several constructive conversations about respect and boundaries. Daniel and Sophie were not. The party was everything I had originally envisioned. Martha was the guest of honor, having become a dear friend and ally. Mr. Harris attended with his daughter, and I formally thanked him for his vigilance that night. My professional peers admired my architectural choices and sustainable features, validating the vision I had for the space. As the evening wound down, I found myself sitting on my repaired window seat, watching the sunset paint my Japanese maple in golden light. Martha joined me, offering a cup of tea. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "in all my years of teaching literature, I found that the most powerful stories were about people discovering their own strength through adversity. You've written quite a chapter these past weeks." I smiled, feeling a profound sense of peace that had been absent before. I never expected my brother's betrayal to be the catalyst for finding my voice. But sometimes the most painful experiences teach us the most important lessons. The journey had indeed taught me invaluable lessons. I learned the importance of setting clear boundaries, even with family. I discovered that my intuition about protecting my privacy had been correct all along. Most significantly, I realized that I didn't need to prove my worth to people who were determined to undervalue me. My home had become more than just a physical space. It represented my independence, my values, and my right to define success on my own terms. The invasion had violated that space temporarily, but in reclaiming it, I had also reclaimed my sense of self. As my guests departed that evening, each offering warm congratulations on my beautiful home, I found a chapter closing and a new one beginning. My relationship with my family would never be the same, but perhaps it could evolve into something healthier, built on mutual respect rather than outdated expectations. Sometimes the homes that matter most aren't the ones we're born into, but the ones we create for ourselves, furnished with boundaries, self-respect, and the wisdom to know when to close certain doors so others can open. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who didn't respect your independence? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life journeys of personal growth and family dynamics. Thank you for joining me today, and remember, your worth is not determined by others' ability to see it.